Alrighty, gang. Welcome back to Gutowski Files, starring Stephen Gutowski. He is the founder and owner of TheReload.com, the editor-in-chief, the maker of coffee. He also does all the cleaning, the cooking. No, there's other people there, but Stephen is the man. Stephen, how are you, sir?
Today's episode is supported by DroneQuote, a veteran-owned business that's a champion for homeowners in the solar and roofing world. These guys are all about honesty, integrity, and doing what's right for the customer. They get you multiple quotes from top installers backed by a 30-year warranty. They even use drones to inspect your roof before and after installation to hold installers accountable. If you value straight answers and want an advocate on your side, don't go solar without DroneQuote, your dedicated homeowner advocates for solar installations nationwide. Hit the link in the description to find out more.
Good. I don't really drink coffee, so is that like allowed in the like gun owning internet space? You do not drink coffee. It seems to be very closely tied.
I don't know. I think it's weird. I think you're European to me now. Now Steven's now European. That's what I think.
I don't dislike coffee. You know what's caffeine has no effect on me.
No kidding.
So that's probably part of it. Yeah, it's apparently like a genetic thing. Like so it's almost like a superhuman thing where you have no. You genetically evolved to not be impacted by caffeine. So I actually drink energy drinks, but as a soda replacement, because energy drinks are 0 calories, right? And they taste like soda, but they don't make me feel anything in terms of like the caffeine effect. So that interesting tidbit there to start off the show.
I like how you went from me calling you a European to immediately fixing your entire image by referring to yourself basically as a superhero because you're immune to the effects of caffeine.
From what I've read in the journals, the scientific journals, that's a result of a genetic mutation. So I'm kind of like an X-Men is how I read it, at least. To each their own, I suppose.
So there are a couple of articles over at The Reload about the recent presidential debate that happened. Was it this week? Crikey, the time's flying by.
Was it? It was last week, right?
Yeah, my son's getting married this week, so we're running around like headless chickens and a lot of prep, so my mind is kind of all over the place. But a lot of people saw the debate or watched the highlights or watched analysis of it, and I think the thing that you pointed out was interesting that I hadn't realized until I opened up TheReload.com was that the topic of guns and the Second Amendment never came up, not even once. Now, you could say that's because the moderators didn't ask any questions, but as you and I discussed before we hit the record button, well, the candidates clearly can go off and talk about anything they want. They weren't going to stop them from doing that. So why do you think it didn't come up at all, if you had to guess?
Yeah, and I think that's a key point to start off with. Like, it wasn't asked about, but the candidates can and did pivot to whatever they wanted throughout the day. And that's a common thing in politics. You can get asked whatever and talk about what you actually want to talk about. And so one thing that it tells you, perhaps, is that these candidates didn't really want to talk about guns, which was a little bit surprising to me, especially from Joe Biden. Now, we all saw Joe Biden's performance, so maybe he just didn't have the wherewithal to pivot when he was supposed to. But his campaign has been emphasizing gun control a lot more in recent weeks and months. I mean, even just before the debate happened, you had his Surgeon General come out and make an announcement about how guns need to be addressed as a
public health issue.
Public safety, public health issue, which is a very old idea within the gun control movement. But, it's part of his administration emphasizing gun control again when he spoke at Everytown for gun safety, their national rally for the first time, right after Hunter Biden was convicted. We talked about that when it happened. Then he put out a gun control ad. So they've been kind of emphasizing this issue more and more. It's seemingly to try and appeal to some of those Democrats who haven't come home yet. Some of the Democrats who aren't really enthused by his candidacy. And so, to me, I felt like it's interesting that he didn't try to go to that during the debate. And, Trump, of course, you could say the same thing for Trump to some degree. He if you look at the pre-debate Fox News poll, where Joe Biden was leading overall in that poll, but if you looked at the issue of guns, Trump was leading by about the same margin that Biden was leading overall. So, he has reason to go to it as well, and he didn't try either.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And again, it's a little thing, right? But one of the reasons I like going over to the Reload is just because something like that hadn't occurred to me that they hadn't brought it up. But if you're Stephen Gutowski, you're thinking about Second Amendment and gun stuff all the time, so you notice stuff like that. So I appreciate that immensely. And there's another article. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and the other thing too is it's kind of a continuing trend with this election. We saw this in the primaries as well, in the Republican primary, where the issue just didn't really come up at all. It didn't come up during the debates, really. There was like one question during the Fox News debate that was somewhat gun related, at least. And then, obviously Trump sat out all those debates, so there was just the other candidates involved, but it just wasn't a primary issue. It wasn't a top issue in the primary. And it looks like outside of trying to appeal perhaps to their own bases, Trump is going to the NRA meetings and giving speeches there. Biden is going to the gun control groups and giving speeches and trying to motivate his base voters. But as far as like making this an issue to try and persuade the swing voter types, that doesn't seem to be a top priority so far.
So over to the Supreme Court, I think it's interesting that sometimes the Supreme Court speaks by not doing a thing, and what they have not done recently is taken any new Second Amendment related cases. Now, we've had cases from the California advertising case, which was a First Amendment case, to Bruin, which is a Second Amendment case, and more recent cases involving the Second Amendment. And for some reason, there's been several cases that I think some people who pay attention to this stuff thought one or two of them might make it, and they declined. I think it was 7 cases total that could have gone to the Supreme Court that they turned down.
Yeah, so they had conference on Monday, which is where they go and discuss what cases they want to take up. And in order for the Supreme Court to hear a case, you have to have 4 justices vote in favor of doing that, which you can see as a relatively low bar compared to, you have to have 5 to win to get a majority on the court. You just need 4 to take a case. And they announced earlier today, we're filming this on Tuesday, that they are they have sort of taken some of these cases, because they did what's called grant, vacate, and remand, which is where they grant a case. Technically, they vacate the lower court's ruling, and then they remand it back down. They send it back down to them to relitigate the case in light of what they just decided in Rahimi, which was the domestic violence restraining order case we talked about last week, right, or the week before. And so there's some action. It's just that they didn't take up any case on the merits themselves yet. So they've kind of extended the life of some of these lower court cases, specifically the sensitive places case in New York, right? The one where after Bruin happened and New York started to have to issue permits to people for concealed carry, they basically kind of went a bit wild with creating new sensitive places where you can't carry your gun, even if you have a permit, right? That was kind of their solution to the problem in New York. The lawmakers who weren't happy with the Supreme Court's decision, they thought, okay, fine, we'll do this instead. That case has now been GVR'd back down. You have the Range case, which was the one about the guy who lied about his income to get food stamps in Pennsylvania in the 90s, right? And he's been banned from owning guns ever since then. And then the Third Circuit found in his favor that the law is unconstitutional as applied to him personally, not on its face, but as applied to him. And they GVR'd that case, and a number of other cases that dealt with the felon in possession laws. And then they also outright denied cert on, they denied taking up a case, any of the cases that deal with the Illinois assault weapons ban, the ban on so-called assault weapons, generally speaking, are things like AR-15s or AK-47s or other popular firearms, ban on their sale in Illinois that happened just recently. The court decided not to take that case up, although there's some interesting notes, I think, on all of these cases, but that one in particular.